Hey, what's up? Happy New Year, everybody. Almost. Happy strange weekend between Christmas and New Year's. It's always an odd week this week. But anyway, welcome to This Week in Mormons. I'm Jeff Openshaw, your host and founder. Happy to be here. Happy to be joined this week by none other than Kurt Frankham from Leading Saints.
Hey,
What's going on,
Jeff.
sir?
Aren't
Hi.
you also chairman of the board or something? Like you
Oh
need
yeah,
a good legacy name title.
I'm every title you could imagine. I'm CEO. I'm chairman of the board. I am Legion. Wait a minute. It's not quite right. Anyway, this is kind of a funny week, right? When Christmas is all fun, all the hype to it, and then you just kind of everything just kind of sags.
I got plenty to do, Jeff. I'll tell you that. But am I doing it? Yeah, not really. Not really. I went to a movie yesterday.
What'd you see?
I saw the new Spider-Man.
Dude, like, am I right, dude?
I mean, okay, like maybe the hype it was too hyped for me. I heard a lot of hype.
I don't know if we should avoid spoiler talk or not. I mean, it's only a week and a half old.
That's true.
I don't
know.
But
I my spoiler-free review was like, I kind of walked out feeling like I thought there'd be more, but maybe it was too hyped. I sort of knew what was coming. Maybe it was spoiled for me. That's the problem. But
you thought there'd be more in like the most packed to the gills.
Well, I don't know.
Spider-Man movie ever.
I can't articulate why it didn't strike that chord with me, like some were saying, and others in the theater were like loving it. I mean, there was like, it sounded like there was praise and clapping, and
it sounded like there was praise.
Yes, absolutely.
Hands.
I mean, people were geeking out, and I was like, okay, all right. Well, it seems a little forced, and there's some moments where I'm like, why are we just having a conversation at this point? I don't know.
I did think that so much of it, like I know a lot of this has been successful because, well, it's still a Sony produced film because Sony owns the rights to Spider-Man. Marvel Studios doesn't, right? Sony does their thing, but it's been many years now that they've licensed back Spidey to the Marvel people, which is why he was in like Captain America, and then the Infinity War movies and his own films are tied to the MCU and all that. But I did think it was a fascinating exercise in either Marvel having the idea or Sony having the idea to sort of bring back the previous two Spider-Man attempts with their villains and stuff, and kind of like say it's all the multiverse. Like this is the
I guess that's my criticism of it. Is I feel like they started with the premise of like, okay, let's get these three on the same screen, and now let's figure out a plot that would work in. And the plot seemed a little forced, a little shallow. I don't know. It was fine.
There's a multiverse and he has to save the villains. He's like, wait, they're not going to die. This is all in the trailers, folks. But basically, he's just like, well, these people are all going to go die trying to fight me. Maybe I can redeem them. It's a story of redemption. Redemption is all over the place, Kurt.
And if it was about Jesus, then I'd embrace that. But
I am curious if there weren't so many like ho 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 moments, how it would hold up just as like a regular film. Like if you have never seen the other Spider-Man movies from the previous iterations, would like how meaningful would it be in that sense too? I don't know.
So I would say, as far as like a fanboy moment, the new Ghostbusters did it for me than the Spider-Man.
And I wanted to see that, but that was just lower on the list.
Man, it is phenomenal. I love it. But I was like, in the 80s, I was like all in with Ghostbusters. I love that world, that universe. So
I used to watch Ghostbusters a lot as a kid, but I'm pretty sure the version we had recorded was broadcast on basic cable or the Disney Channel or something like that. And so when I finally watched it on DVD, like in my 20s, I was like, well, there's a little more language in this than I remember. And then there's one sequence when Ray is basically intimate with a ghost that's like not in broadcasts of it at all. And I was just like, whoa, where'd this come from? This is in the movie? I had no idea.
It's an interesting experience to watch a movie as an adult that you watched several times as a child, especially maybe the more, that are closer to, not necessarily for kids movies, but, and so sometimes as I sit there and maybe I watch a movie, like I took my 6-year-old to Ghostbusters, this new one. And, there's moments where I'm like, oh, is he going to pick up on that? I'm like, probably not. We're good.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't want to, I still haven't kind of, So you took your 6-year-old. I haven't like gotten to the point yet where I figured out at what point, as a father, as a Latter-day Saint who cares about the media I consume, all that stuff. Like, at what point do I willfully expose my kid to minor profanity?
You're right. And I'm just a horrible person that's done that already. But I don't know. It's it was fun going to the theater with my kids and watching a childhood, story with my childhood children.
I've
But
tried all weekend to watch Encanto with my kids because it's like already on Disney
oh
Plus. It
yeah,
came out in theaters like a month ago, and now it's on Disney Plus, like for no extra charge. Like, okay, Disney, there you just gave up on that
you
one, I
haven't seen
guess.
it yet, then?
No, they've
I've heard great things.
I've heard great things too. I've not successfully convinced
Yeah, I
them. They're
haven't
very
either.
set in their ways. It's like, no, I want Toy Story 4 or 101 Dalmatians, full stop. That's the end of the discussion.
It's true. It's amazing how they can watch the same movie like over and over again. And as an adult, I just can't do that. Right? Like it's
I love how much my oldest is like, I like Toy Story, but not number 3. He's always very clear, not number 3. I think number 3 is a little intense.
yeah,
It's
that's
like a
the
Prison Break.
yes.
Yeah, number 3 is the best one in
Oh,
my opinion,
absolutely.
but I have a
I love
dark
that one.
soul.
Yeah.
So, was your Christmas all right? All
Christmas was
good?
great. We got a puppy, Jeff. So
Sorry.
I don't know if I would recommend this this type of Christmas, but we
No.
we did it. And I've been telling my 9-year-old daughter for, we got into a home in the last year. I put up a
Right.
fence. And I've been telling my 9-year-old, like, hey, let's wait till the spring because I know there's a lot of outside time that you spend with a puppy. But the planets aligned, and my wife forced the issue, and so she won over, and we got a puppy, and causes me to be out in my backyard at 3 in the morning, and I don't like it, but I do it for the children,
Who
Jeff.
doesn't wanna be outside in
Oh,
Utah in December at 3 AM,
especially
man?
this week, we've had some
I've heard
serious
you guys. Yeah.
snow, so no fun.
Well,
But
at least you have a puppy.
we got a puppy, and every kid needs a puppy. I mean, I'm willing to go through the sacrifice because every kid needs a puppy, or every kid needs a dog, I should say, and won't be a puppy forever. I've been told, and that's that. So
I
how's
guess.
your Christmas, Jeff?
It was awesome. My sister and her husband came out from, Arizona, spent a week with us, and we had a grand time just doing stuff, did some touristy thing. We went to Mount Vernon on Christmas Eve, George Washington's
Mm,
home and estate. Nothing says Christmas Eve like
right.
colonial America. Um, but it was nice. Like, I haven't been there for a while. I mean, it's not that far away or anything. It's like 25 minutes from my house. So,
Now your sister has never co-hosted
no, my
podcast.
sister never has. Long
Have you
time listen.
asked?
No. Maybe as a joke.
As a joke.
Are
You
you
got your mom on
disappointed?
here once. That was great.
Oh, that was a
I
blast.
love meeting the Open Shot clan.
She told us all about. We're actually we were kind of resharing some of our top 10 downloaded episodes of the year, and the one with my mom was one of those.
Really? Well, I'm
I
not
think
surprised.
she spent a while talking about how the church is in China
Yeah,
because
that was interesting. I
she
enjoyed
lived
that.
in China for a few years. There was also new stuff like normal, but I think the main cool feature was that we got a good inside look into how things function for a church that's kind of like off the books, so to speak, in China, and how that actually functions and how it functions when you're an expat there. And it's very different. Ever since President Nelson announced the temple in Shanghai, which by all indications isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah,
Or it's good to get some insight into how that works. So that was cool. Yeah.
nice.
Anyway, Christmas was great. Hooray!
And we'll get
Huzzah!
through this week and get back to life. The first couple weeks in January are
Back
literally my
to
favorite time
life.
of year
Back
because
to reality.
that's right,
Back
Jeff.
to
We all get to go back and just get back in the flow of things, get stuff done, make the world a better place.
yeah,
The
yeah,
the PTO resets.
yeah.
Is that
Is
how
that
that
what,
works, Jeff? I don't have any, so
no? Oh, I'm self-employed. I do
yeah,
whatever I want.
that's right.
Mine does not reset. No, you can roll over a certain
Oh,
amount
nice.
going into the next year. But yeah, I don't have a lot of PTO accrued right now, so I'm just kind of trying to hang on to it. If anybody wants to like buy me PTO,
Is
go
that a
ahead.
thing? Can
I don't
people
even know if my
gift it to
company
you?
allows that. Some companies do things like that. I'm not sure mine does, but I'm just going to throw it out there in the hope they do. So,
Nice.
all right.
Make sure you put the GoFundMe link in the show notes, Jeff. We'll get you some PTO.
Well, hey, no, let's give that shout out to our patrons on Patreon.
Hey,
Everybody, you guys are great.
I'm one of them.
Thank you for making this year possible. You guys help us keep the lights on here for in a world of massive inflation and increasing costs. You
Glad you
help
brought
keep
that
the
up, Jeff.
wind going. I'm sure you are. Like, it wouldn't be an episode with Kurt if we didn't find a reason for you to be upset with Joe Biden.
That's right.
So,
That's
I
right.
mean, come on. Um, so, but yeah, hey, thanks, patrons. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for helping out. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/thisweekinmormons. If you want to support Kurt, he's an actual registered nonprofit, so there's different means to do that. But
That's
you can
right.
find out at leadingsaints.org.
Big fat donate button there. We'll take it.
Tax deductible, people.
Boom.
For Kurt, not for me. Mine is
That's right.
not. I don't have that offering. Okay. So if you really think how much you're donating to TWIM is going to make a dent in your taxable income anyway, I don't I don't think it will. So don't, especially not since they've raised the child tax credit anyway. Even your tithing barely. I don't know if you've noticed this, but tithing, unless you make a lot of money, you basically don't pay enough in tithing as a deduction anymore in the United States for it to make a difference, for it to exceed what you now get in the doubled child tax credit, which is kind of cool. But I have seen some other research that's shown that charitable giving has dropped since the tax laws changed a bit, which, I mean, it's like sad because we should just give to charity anyway, but it also shows how much being able to reduce one's tax burden could help encourage charitable giving. And that's not as strong as it used to be because that child did that deduction just does it all.
You're eligible to run for president now, Jeff. So
This is also true, but so are you. I look forward to the
should we jump
campaign
on the
when
same
you.
ticket?
No, I don't think that's going to work unless we do it old school ways where the loser becomes vice president.
Ooh,
That's how they used to do it.
that's right. That's right.
So,
And then the vice president just like secretly hates the president for 4 years. And
not even secretly. Some of our
that's
history
true.
is just fascinating. It's
Yeah.
amazing it took them that long to realize maybe it's not the best idea.
Did that change after what Kennedy and Johnson or what?
No. It was earlier than that. What I don't remember is if it
Uh,
came along with the.
I guess Kennedy and Johnson they did hate each other, but they still chose each other.
It
Right?
was a different kind of thing,
Right.
yeah, a marriage of convenience, and we do see
That's
this
right.
in politics. But that's not what we're talking about today, folks. We're talking about the slowest week in Latter-day Saint news of the year. What a way to go out on in 2012.
That's right.
2021, folks. Yeah,
Where are
what
we
happens?
starting?
What happens is there's less stuff happening during this week, and there's also less stuff being published about what is happening because people are rightfully on vacation
Because it's
and
that week, Jeff.
and living their lives. So good for them. But we are, of course, committed to continue bringing you the greatest in news, and we got some stuff about missionaries, some boat parades, some concerts, some studies on Gen Z. All kinds of fun things are happening this week, I guess. I'm just going to start off with the new musical.
The lead story here. Let's do
Shut up,
this.
Kurt. Shut up. So, this is by Caitlin Bancroft at the Salt Lake Tribune. Kurt figured out a great hack for the Salt Lake Tribune if you don't want to actually read it.
You should only release it to the patrons, Jeff. So
No, I'm going to give this to the people. This is why they're here. If you go to the Salt Lake Tribune and it pops up with a paywall thing, right, which it often does. If you're some articles work on incognito windows if you're using Chrome, but a lot of them don't. We discovered that if you open up a new incognito window and quickly hit Control A and then Control C to copy all the text on the page, it'll do that before.
I don't think you have to do it quickly, Jeff. I did it long when that pop-up was on.
I was trying to do it with the pop-up on the screen and it wouldn't work. So I don't know. But basically, it'll copy the content underneath the pop-up and then you can paste it into something. You do a little bit of cleanup, but you get that body text, people. You get it. So I'm not saying like you should do this. I'm not encouraging fraud. I'm just telling you what's out there. So this is about a fella named David Nolan. The headline reads, LDS Church denied him financial help, so he wrote a musical about its wealth. And a man named David Logan, I think he lived in Cache Valley? No, or is that where he was? Cache Valley, does it say? I don't remember. But there's a satirical show called The Good Shepherds, which is going to debut at Peary's Egyptian Theater in Ogden coming up here. Now, David Nolan professes that he hasn't left the faith. He had an experience about this, but he's like a faithful member of the church. And as he says, the value of the church still outweighs the negative, all right, no matter what. He's just saying, let's have a conversation about the value of human life versus the value of billions in stocks just sitting there. So his main issue was this got started 3 years ago when, he's a Cache Valley resident. He faced a crisis. His business had recently failed. His savings were wiped out after insurance wouldn't cover a rotting exterior wall in his home, and he paid nearly $20,000 to replace it. Home repairs can be costly, but I feel like 20 grand to replace a wall on the outside. I know wood prices have gone up a lot over the past little while, but I don't know. Maybe people think I sound stupid, but I look at that. I'm like, I feel like that could be less than $10,000 job.
You want to get a few quotes on that one.
But maybe he has a very large McMansion. Maybe it's a very difficult wall to replace. I don't know. Either way, he had to spend the insurance wouldn't cover it. Because when it turns out he was actually standing with his hose in his attic, just pouring water into the cavity of the wall just for days on end until it rotted out. And so that's why they wouldn't cover it, because it was his fault. And so he went to his bishop, seeing if he could get some assistance basically to pay his mortgage. And I love it. It says, given his longtime devotion, including a 2-year proselytizing mission and, quote, significant service positions in his ward, he thought he would find support there. Now, I'm all for people finding support, but I don't believe there should be some kind of cutoff where you're saying, well, I've been devoted for a very long time. I went on a mission. I've been in prominent positions of leadership. I am more worthy of assistance because of this than somebody else. I mean, Kurt, you've been a bishop. I don't know if that exactly tracks with like, I don't think you have a rubric or anything when you're giving out assistance and you say, well, say, hold on a second. Have
Right.
you at least been at the ward mission leader level in terms of leadership?
Yeah, that wasn't on my rubric. I mean, I would say every bishop has a rubric, but they develop it on their own,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
that's
no, for sure.
but it's not given to you from any official point of contact.
So anyway, the bishop reviewed his finances and offered and authorized him to get $40 worth of food. I don't think he wasn't even really asking for food. They gave him a food order for $40 instead of like helping out in any other way. So he scraped by, made it happen, and then of course we had the $100 billion stockpile stuff that came out. I guess we're probably coming up on 2 years of that. I guess, huh? The rainy day account. So he wrote a musical, a fun hippity hoppity satirical musical that pokes fun at the church's massive largesse. Kurt, how does this
So
make you feel?
a few things come to mind. First off, I bet there's an entirely different story from the bishop side of things, but he hasn't finished his musical yet. But I'm just so when does a situation like this jump in their cognitive mind from, wow, this is a tough situation to I am going to write a musical about this. That seems like a huge jump and one that I didn't see that one coming.
Well, the musical style is a mix of hip hop, pop, and rock songs. I mean, this is almost like what Alex Boyer was trying to do with the blatant Hamilton style knockoff of The Life of Joseph Smith, which never went anywhere, which makes me very sad. I want that.
I
I
hope
need that.
it goes somewhere. I'd like to see that, but
So this is what no one's doing. If I were in Utah, now one thing he does stress, he says this is like fun satire. It's also cleaner, like it's not this ribald comedy of the Book of Mormon musical. And he's stressing this, saying like, yeah, you can bring your family to this if you have good humor about it, and it is appropriate in that sense.
and
You
it
might deem it.
features. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say you might deem it inappropriate just based on the objectives, perhaps, or any sort of tacit shaming of the church, but content wise, it's all right. It's all
It
right. It's no worse than Kurt taking his 6-year-old to a PG-13 movie. Anyway,
features such songs like "Let's Buy Florida" and "Look Down on Me." I don't see how this is at all going to help his case, and nor I don't even know how you would market something like this. But bless your heart and your artistic intuition. Maybe this will just be next on Broadway.
well,
Who
I mean, it's
knows?
playing in Ogden. I mean, you'd expect this to be playing at like the Rocky Anderson Memorial Theater in Salt Lake or something, right?
No,
But not there. So,
I'll probably sit this one out though. So
Twimsters, if any of you go to this, please let me know. I would love to know more about this. I should interview him. I won't put a paywall up.
do it, Jeff. We'd love to hear it.
Good, thank you. Thank you. All right, Kurt, I did my piece. What's
All right, what we got here?
your top business here?
Let's maybe talk about one that is quite sad that we hear about too often. A missionary in
Yeah.
the from DR Congo passed away in the Cote d'Ivory. How do you say that mission?
Cote d'Ivoire.
Cote d'Ivoire. Okay.
Cote d'Ivoire.
A full-time missionary for the church has passed away. Elder, I'm not going to get this right, but I'll try. Tishama Anaklet Tishama, 24, from Laputa, Democratic Republic of Congo, passed away unexpectedly. Sorry, Jeff.
Sorry,
Hey,
I can't be
you're the one that
laughing,
asked me to do this.
but the city is called Luputa, and
Laputa. Hey,
the way you said it sounded like some major Spanish profanity. I'm sorry. Sorry.
hey, for the record, Jeff invited me on here. Okay. So, but he shortly after awaking in the morning, he was found unresponsive by his companion, and he was taken to the hospital where he passed away. His cause of death remains unknown at this time, but preliminary reports suggest it is the result of an undiagnosed medical condition. So,
Jeez.
uh,
Out of nowhere too. 24 years old. I don't know
Shouldn't
about
have
you,
them.
but when I had those missionaries on my mission who were like the older guys, the ones who were in their like
24
mid
seemed
20s.
ancient, right?
Yeah, it seemed ancient, but they were always rock stars too.
Yeah,
Because in my experience, all of them were guys who were either converts to the church or guys who were less active for a stretch and like got their stuff together and came around. And so they had lived like for real and
right.
repented for real and like
Yeah,
understood things. And I loved learning from them. And I obviously don't know if this elder was in that same boat or not, but it's also sad when you don't have all the answers, right? When this just
yeah,
happens, like you
yeah.
just get
Hopefully
up and
they figure out more about that. But man, tragic.
yeah. Well, now I feel like I can't joke. I feel very bad for laughing at the whole Luputa thing. I just heard Kurt
How
say it,
do
and
you
I was
say it,
like,
Jeff?
I'm veering very hard into strong U sounds. Luputa,
Luputa.
Luputa. I
All
don't
right.
know. Just I don't know.
You
Just
get what
not
you
saying
pay
it the way
for.
you said
So,
it.
all right.
So some other missionary news out of Latvia. There's some missionaries in Latvia who on December 25th posted a video on, or their parents did on Facebook or somebody like that. They just made a video for their family for Christmas. So, in fairness, they made a video for their family for Christmas. Okay. We've covered a lot of very interesting Facebook and social media videos made by missionaries, especially during the pandemic. Don't forget the Star Wars one when they reenact it, like the closing sequence of Rogue One inside a stake center, and somehow it has to do with scriptures. It works. This appears just strictly for familial amusement. I don't think there's like another gospel angle here. It's not to win over converts, but it's just them just acting like 20-year-old boys, uh, lip syncing to all kinds of like Christmas riffs on other classics. And I mean, I'd be amused if my kids sent this to me, I think. I don't know how I feel about this, Kurt.
About this, the video in general, or what?
Just the whole video in general. I mean,
Hey, it's
good for
18-year-olds being 18. Bless their
I
hearts,
mean, good
and
for them. I'm
I'm
sure
glad
it's
they're passing time. Maybe during a slow spot. I mean, I think in Latvia, I don't know how how awesome the work is there, or how much progress you can make with a lot of people. And so, yeah, grab a camera and do it. And I would hope, Jeff, that the opening sequence of this podcast episodes features one of these songs, at least for 10 seconds or so.
Oh, I mean, it already did. Everyone heard it, didn't you
That's
hear
right.
everyone?
That's
I
the
mean,
magic of
the
editing.
church is not huge in Latvia by any means. I mean, there's like two branches in Riga, the capital. Um, maybe a few more in that. Yeah, there's four branches in the Riga district. It's not it's not a lot, but the church is only. I think we probably had people there. I don't know all the history, perhaps before Cold War times and this and that. But a lot of Eastern Europe, the church doesn't have a
So
lengthy
did
history, and
did this missionary headbanging video just land in social media somewhere, and away it went a little
I don't.
around?
I wouldn't say it's. I just kind of. I actually do not remember how I happened upon this at all. I have no idea how I found this. Now that you mention it, I have no idea where I
Well, now
stumbled
you're
upon
sharing
it.
it with the world, Jeff. So
But because it
they
only
thank
has
you.
like it's shared by some people. It's got like 4 shares, one of which is ours. Um, but good on them. Good on them. I don't know why LDS Living hasn't picked up on this. Come on, LDS Living. So, anyways, good
Nice.
for you, missionaries. Happy Merry Christmas. Yay.
In other news related to Light the World and Christmas time, Light the World themed boat wins Best Music Award in the 2021 Newport Beach Boat Parade. And so in Newport Beach, they have this great parade on boats, right? And I don't know, Jeff, you probably have more background on this tradition, but can any group, and is it just religious groups or churches that participate in this parade, or how does it work?
No. The parade can be from all sorts of individuals and groups. Think of it like a parade on the asphalt, like in your town.
Right. Okay. So it's just a mix
It
of
could be
community groups and people, and so they the Newport Beach, California Christmas boat, the Best Music Award. The boat was sponsored by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who volunteered a 60-foot yacht and brought
it's nice of
together.
them to have that at the
Yeah,
ready. I
yeah.
appreciate that about
I think
that's
every
good.
stake has, some stakes have like, stake
Well, when you're from
property.
Newport Beach,
But
When you're from Newport Beach, Kurt, of course you can, because they built the temple. As we know, longtime listeners know, they built the temple. That is right. It is their temple for a reason in Newport Beach because they built it with their yacht
like old
money.
school, like members came together and poured cement
You
and
should have been there. There were thousands of people with their pottery and fine china, um, anecdotally and not historically, making the plaster for the temple.
love
What
it.
I'm referencing there, folks, is that the actual data on everyone, grounding up their fine china for the Kirtland Temple is not actually supported by historic information. Anyway, sorry to burst your bubble, folks,
Oh
but
boy.
if that one comes up in your lesson, which it did earlier this year, you just kind of say, okay, it's not in the
So
manual.
this boat, Jeff's
Yeah.
the scene depicted an angel declaring the glad news of Jesus' birth as shepherds bowed in awe. Joseph invited all to come see while Mary cradled the baby Jesus. A banner displayed on the side of the boat stated, "Wise men still seek him, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints."
And it
So,
won an award.
boom, best music. There's got to be a clip to the music, but there's not.
And they won best music last time too. Yeah, what is the music?
Goes uncontested every year, it seems.
Because it doesn't mention much more about it. Does it say song
The
here?
yacht has a sweet sound system, I guess. So,
It was just songs that proclaimed the birth of Jesus Christ, invited listeners to come, let us adore him. Comments like "Happy birthday, Jesus, God bless you," and "There's Jesus" were frequently heard from the crowd. I mean, that's cool. People said there was a reverent response. I'm glad they're doing this. Newport Beach Boat Parade's a lot of fun, actually, because it's not just parades on their own. It's floats. People also decorate their boats with Christmas lights. It's a whole fun thing. It's a good time.
nice.
So good for them. All right,
Where are we
folks.
going, Jeff?
We're going to the year in review, which
A
we've kind
look
of hit
back.
on. Church News does year in review. See photos and read highlights from 2021. The lead image here is of President Nelson getting a vaccine, which probably is the story of the year in general, and also one of the earlier stories of the year because he did that as far back in the third week of January of this year. So, a lot of great highlights. This is literally just Church News compiling stuff, so you can click on a bunch of other things. Did they link to their own story? It says click on a look back at Church News highlights. Photos. What am I doing here? Anyways, lots of things. You can read all about all the highlights. Primary general presidency, Ronald A. Rasband participates in the inauguration of Spencer Cox, new leaders and new missions. Elder Gong.
Silver medalist, Jeff.
Yes, we've got the silver medalist.
Michaela Skinner.
That was a cool story because she was almost on her way home from the Olympics,
Yeah.
and they called her back up, and then she won, which is
Another
great.
future guest of This Week in Mormons, right?
I don't know, man. When we interviewed Noelle Picus-Pace earlier this year,
Oh, yeah.
which was earlier this year. Former Olympian, you might remember her.
Yes.
She did skeleton, back in, was it Sochi where she competed, I think?
I think so.
Lovely lady. Shockingly, one of our poorest performing interview podcasts in terms of downloads. I don't know if something went wrong, but I think I don't know. I'm skittish on Olympians
All right.
now,
Well,
buddy.
this is how
But
we
Michaela,
learn.
the door is open. I would love to hear from you, as would our people. Anyways, President Nelson gets a vaccine. We dedicated the Winnipeg, Manitoba temple, which, if you remember, was significant because it was the first temple dedicated since the pandemic began, supplanting other temples that would have been dedicated. We got that one. Then we also did Pocatello, right? And finally, the Rio de Janeiro temple is going to come back. We also got to see those great videos about councils, that little 3-part series they released, if you remember any of that, about how they counsel together. I like the big round table they have that also has a pentagon of monitors that they can read. You got 5 screens, just any which way you look, you can get good information. And one thing I'm glad to be reminded of, remember earlier in January of this year when they did that cool primary activity?
Yes.
On the video, and it's
Yes,
like
it was so
more
well
of
done.
that. Joy D. Jones is awesome, and I'm excited for the new primary presidency. But Sister Jones, President Jones, I think had such an incredible impact on that organization, and that was terrific. We'd spent nearly a year struggling to find ways to engage our primary aged kids, and this was a great thing. My kids loved it. I hope they will do more of them. I know we're kind of,
by the looks of that set, it should be like a weekly program.
yeah. And I imagine they look at it like, well, we're kind of back in church more now, and maybe it's not as necessary, but I think something like this would be great.
Oh, yeah.
If only once a year, but maybe twice a year, even, just to give the kids something exciting to look forward to and see other kids from around the world. I thought that was a terrific effort. We also, of course, had the conference center was sort of had people in it for conference, mostly those who needed to be there.
A little more echoey.
Just a little bit more echoey. Lots of things happen. You can find a long form list of all of this as well over at the Church News, where it goes by month, really just getting into pretty much every detail of everything that has happened. You
Yeah.
remember, like Elder Holland spoke from St. George, Utah. President Oaks spoke in that meeting in Charlottesville. A lot of cool things happened this year. Any other standouts to you this year, Curtis? We're winding up 2021. Anything
Yeah,
happening to you?
I noticed when I was perusing through the weekly church news where they featured some of these stories, they had a whole section about all the handbook updates,
Mm.
which was a big part of this year. Lots of dynamic updates to the handbook that I think sets us on a good path. And I don't know if we'll see obviously to that extent, but subtle updates here and there that we'll see on our app. And it's nice that it's just all on the app, and that we don't have to wait for a reprint of the actual handbook or whatever, and everybody can see it. And so I think that was pretty notable. That another, I think, marker in President Nelson's, uh, you know, role as president of the church. So
Oh, one that I recall as well. A little bit better and not as good, but the whole announcement earlier in the year that they were going to drastically renovate not just the Salt Lake Temple, but the Manti Temple
yeah,
and remove all the historic murals and redo the floor plan. There was a lot of outcry about that. And at first they said, what? I think we're going to try to preserve the murals and put them in the church history library or something like that and
mhm,
take them out. And then eventually they just did a 180 and said, okay, we're just going to keep the Manti Temple layout as it is and just make it so there's rooms with, there's still no live endowment, but
yeah,
we're going to do that. And then we'll just build a second temple up the road in Ephraim to handle the demand, which I thought was great. I've said this before. I sit among the few who are frustrated that the church never even said something like, "Well, the saints were really concerned about this more than we even expected, so we took it to the Lord." And it's always like they were so afraid to even open the door that any type of agitation could result in the church taking action. Like, nope, this was the plan all along, folks. This is the plan all. But either way, I'm glad it was that was an interesting saga in the spring to kind of see this develop week after week. And I'm convinced there would be no temple in Ephraim. I mean, I'm not, as you know, the Lord, but
and there's our title of the episode, folks. There you go.
but but like I have to think the Ephraim temple would not be a thing if back when they announced the initial changes, if it was met with kind of a collective like, all right, if there had not been such mobilization of
Yeah,
people who
because
were.
didn't that announcement come in a very like just a random Friday or something? Yeah,
It was a press release like that. And then people like were really organized about their concerns about it, and I think that at least caught the ear of Salt Lake. If they hadn't, they'd probably just be going forward. There would be no new temple in Ephraim that would be announced. That was also it was just announced in a press release. One of the few non-conference temple announcements in recent history. Interesting to see how these things develop.
yeah,
Oh, and
yep.
the first Deseret Industries outside the Western U.S., located in Houston, was dedicated. So, anyways, a great year.
We're
Great
about
time
caught up to
talking.
Chick-fil-A, aren't we? With those locations.
Oh, booyah!
Booyah.
I love the chick. I do. More
All
than a
right,
chick.
where are we going here? Let's see. The Tap Cats, Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square records 2022 Christmas concert. So the Tabernacle Choir, the choir joined by the orchestra at Temple Square. This part of Christmas for a lot of people. So this is part of Christmas for a lot of people. So having the choir and orchestra performing in the PBS special is moving us back to normal, said choir president Michael O. Levitt. So it seems like they're recording these things just so they probably have some obligations with PBS. PBS expects their yearly Christmas concert, and so they got to be ready for it, even though there wasn't a traditional open
Yeah.
to the public Christmas concert, right?
I'm trying to think about the history of it here. I mean, we don't. I know they've showed these on PBS, and I've seen in years past after they do their usual open to the public Christmas concert. That's usually available on DVD or broadcast later on,
Yeah.
but after the fact. I'm trying to remember if they have they said this is back to normal, but I don't remember them traditionally recording the next year's Christmas concert this far in advance for a broadcast.
Yeah.
But
So I
I'm
think typically they'll record so if it was a normal year, they would record this 2021's Christmas concert and then it would show in 2022 on PBS. But this is where they're actually recording next year's
yeah.
concert that'll possibly be shown on PBS in 2023. So I don't know.
I'm wondering, is that the case, or is this literally like they're recording what's going to be broadcast in 2022, which is similar to 2021? I guess they did some 2021 stuff, and now they're just. I mean,
Because last year they didn't have the Christmas concert at all, right?
right?
So probably what happened is that they recorded this year's and made it public this year, and now they're recording next year's, which they'll make it public next year, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. While though this concert that will air in 2022 is being recorded, audiences may enjoy the show produced for broadcast this year. The 2021 concert is virtual, a unique 2-hour retrospective television titled 20 Years of the Tabernacle Choir. So what they've recorded is what they're going to be playing next year on PBS.
So it makes me wonder if they'll have an additional Christmas concert next year that they'll then record for 2023.
One would hope. I mean, hopefully they get back in the swing of things and there's
Right.
actually a normal Christmas concert with
Yes.
people and clapping and such.
Mhm.
I don't know, man. You got this Omicron stuff, though. I don't know what's going to go on here. Hey, so good old the Church News has 2 charts that show us temple reopening progress. Another big story in 2021 was temples reopening after all of them shut down at the beginning of COVID. That we've kind of crawled our way back into it, and now we're at the stage when all of them are open in some capacity. So basically, this can simply be explained by a pie chart, but as a quick reminder, the different phases of temple stuff. So you've got um, phase 4, I believe, is just totally open like normal. I don't know if anything. There's very few in phase 4, I think. Right? Are there any in phase 4 anymore? Or do they pull back? Because now there's also phase 2B, which I need to read a reminder of that. So, but phase 3 at the start of the year, we had 2 temples in phase 3, which provided ordinances for living individuals and proxy ordinances for ancestors, all in a restricted manner that includes attendance limitations. We had 136 temples in phase 2, which offered all living ordinances, no proxy work, 21 in phase 1, which only offered living sealings for husbands and wives, and 9 temples and districts of under renovation temples that were closed or not assigned a phased status. So that both means like DC that was just closed and some that were not coming back online yet. So this went throughout the year. And as of through December 31st, now we have 164 temples in phase 3 offering all living and proxy temple ordinances, 4 temples in phase 2B, which offer all living ordinances and proxy baptisms. That's the main, that's why it's 2B, you have to do baptisms as well. And then 2 temples in phase 1 offering living sealings for husbands and wives. The 6 temples still outside phase 3 status at the end of 2021. Barranquilla, Colombia, Cebu, Philippines, Medford, Oregon, which is closed for maintenance, San Jose, Costa Rica, Seoul, Korea, Suva, Fiji, in phase 1. So we've had a very busy year getting temples back into, operating status.
And I think you still need to set an appointment for those, right? Or is it that a little more?
No, it's not. It's not a. I think they've scrapped. Maybe they've scrapped phase 4 altogether. I'm not seeing much about it.
Yeah.
Phase 4 was the idea that it would be totally normal operations, a free for all, show up like it used to be, and I think we're just flat out not doing that.
Yeah.
Right now.
Mm-hmm. There you have it. And where are we going next? We got photos of Elder Gong. I mean, we got tweets. We got Deseret Book and their new series that has some controversy.
It all gets much headier at this point in this show. This is all stuff Kurt's avoiding.
That's right. Maybe you've picked up on that week to week, especially when I'm co-hosting here. But how about how religious are Gen Z Mormons in the U.S.? The results are mixed. And this is an article on religiousnews.com and by Jana Reese. And she looks at some data about Gen Z. I want to say Generation Z. And this is, Jeff, you looked up 97, those born from 97 to 2010.
I think it's a bit bigger. I think, wasn't it bigger than that?
But these are like our
97 to 2012 is Gen Z.
Okay, 2012. So these are our teenagers and young adults, generally speaking.
Yeah, our kids are Generation Alpha.
Oh, really? Yeah. Who chooses these names?
The people.
People
the Illuminati or all the or the
choose
swamp.
the names for
I think the swamp
viruses and hurricanes. Yeah, it's some committee.
The people.
The people. Mm-hmm. So what stuck out to you? You were looking through some of these numbers, Jeff. But Latter-day Saints, let's see, Mormons report the highest participation rate in what the study called youth group activities at 43%, and the Protestants are the next one behind us at 36%. So Bless you, youth leaders, for making that happen.
And to be clear, this is over the course of the year. 10,000 young people were surveyed, including a total of 470 who self-identified as Latter-day Saints. And of that group, 134 also received an additional set of questions and views. And so I think, Kurt, what you're going at here is you've got, I think the first three are from everybody, and then, right. And then the next three are this, it's the smaller subsample of the 134 gets even smaller in terms of what they think for the follow-up questions. So some of those are interesting because it says their belief in God is about average compared to others and respondents. And then here's the big one that sticks out. Again, very small sample, but it says Mormons rank highest of all faith groups in saying they personally have been harmed by religion, faith, or a religious leader. There's a lot to take with that. We don't know what harmed means. There's a lot of things we haven't defined in that, but they're up top, 59%, above atheists even, which is interesting. And we don't know exactly what that means, though. Could mean a lot of different things. And even Jana Reese points this out. Like, I take that with a grain of salt. I'm not exactly sure what it could all mean in terms of what harm means and how we define these things and how small that sample could be. But that said, it's still worth listening to people. It's like when we had Liz Brown McDonald on earlier this year. She did what was very qualitative anecdotal research about the role of religious rigidity in kids staying active in the church or not, and how that functions if they decide to leave the church. Also a very small sample size, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth discussing because it's not insightful regardless, right? So
Yeah,
still thinks we could learn from this.
Gotta monitor the data, see what we can learn from it. Right, that's the name of the game. What else you got, Jeff?
I'll go into one Kurt doesn't want to touch with a 5,000-foot pole. So this is a Medium piece called Deseret Book Attempts to Serve God and Bigotry, just published today. Interesting piece by James C. Jones. James C. Jones is a prominent influencer, and he writes this whole piece on Medium about his experience being approached by Deseret Book. Deseret Book is doing kind of a thing similar to Masterclass, if you've seen that. They have a platform called Seek, whereas he says that they have folks provide gospel-centered instruction on what appears to be more practical issues, things like how to get more out of scripture study, how to be a single member of the church. And you subscribe to this, you click on it, and there's an expert walks you through these things and teaches you these things. It's kind of a module of sorts. And Kurt, you've kind of dabbled in things like this with the way you do a lot of your virtual summits, for example. So he has a podcast book called Beyond the Block, and Deseret Book approached him to develop an entire module about abandoning attitudes and actions of prejudice, which is a good thing that we've been reckoning with quite a bit as Latter-day Saints for the past more than a year and a half, right? Which we should be we've been reckoning with it for a long time, but we know things have been a bit hotter on that front for the past little while. But earlier this month, basically, he received an email saying that they weren't going to be publishing his content for at least 6 months. He publishes all the emails so you can see them. But basically the reason they weren't going to do it is because of a Facebook post he made in August. If you remember, August was when Elder Holland spoke at BYU and gave the remarks that many people took offense to, the whole, muskets protecting the church. And I will say this is not, to be clear, this is not like coming after church leaders, but I took issue with the fact that the only group Elder Holland singled out as one potentially of detriment to the church was sort of the LGBTQ community. Like there wasn't any going out of the way to come after to also mention others who were also a concern. And so it made it seem like you were singling out this one group and you're not bothering to talk about the other people who are also a threat, quote unquote, to the church. So he wrote his piece about it was pretty. His exact words were, if it loads up, his first thing he said was to condemn the expression of someone's immutable identity in the name of Christ is satanic. So, that's a strong way to lead out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last words he said is we can believe he'll get us. He talks about Christ. Christ will get us past some homophobic, overwhelmingly white ecclesiastical leaders born in the Jim Crow era. Deseret News took issue with this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
As you might understand, the back and forth they have is interesting because I can understand James' perspective on a lot of this. And he's being like very academic and picking apart how he's doing this because he says, and I agree with this part of it, he says Deseret News was all about the tone. Like they're just saying, we can't like do business with someone who has this sort of tone. And you get it. You're working in lots of different businesses. That's just too hot. It's too hot and you can't touch it anymore. And he's arguing back saying, well, look, you're trying to ignore the tone sorry, I mean, you're focusing on the tone, but you're ignoring the content of what I am saying. Are you really saying like what I'm trying to do does not represent Deseret Book's values? Because I think it does. You're taking issue with the tone of a couple of remarks. You can see justifications for arguments on all sides in a situation like this. Absolutely. I don't think there's any way to say one person who's absolutely right, one person isn't. But the one thing I will say, so I don't even necessarily agree with this tone, and I understand Deseret Book's reasoning for being concerned about that. But I do like that he says, quote, putting people's comforts, because Deseret Book kind of said, well, like, this, we don't want to like alienate our base. We don't want to make our customers uncomfortable. But he's like, but putting people's comforts or really anything over people's humanity is idolatry, and not the church nor Deseret Book will ever succeed in fulfilling their mission until they destroy the golden calf of heteronormative white supremacy. Those are some big words there.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, he still says he's an active member of the church. He sustains the brethren, but I think I get part of his point there, where he's saying like, look, you can't serve both, Deseret Book. Like you can't be so concerned about protecting the brethren from anything that you don't engage on bigger issues that are also more important. At the same time, if you come out publicly and use language that's too caustic, even if it's true, even if absolutely you could pick it apart and say, look, the language is just descriptive. You're not actually insulting anyone. But it's about optics, right? Any brand has to be conscious of with whom they ally themselves. I totally understand that. I mean, that's why Kurt is always very careful if he even comes on this show, because he doesn't know what it's going to do to his base.
Oh man, truer words were never spoken, Jeff. No.
I don't know. Do you have a chance to read this or give it any thought?
I've read some of it for sure, and I guess it's just one of those things. Like at the end of the day, like this, with a lot of topics related to the churches, it's just messy. And I'm not surprised that Desert Book did this. Is it shocking? Is it offensive? No, I mean, like you said, this is just there's a brand here. There's optics that have to be taken into consideration, and this is really difficult to do as you're sort of vetting people to stand on your platform stage and share their perspective. I mean, but we both do it, right? There's individuals that will never make it onto Leading Saints. There's probably individuals that'll never make it onto This Week in Mormons, and that's just the way it
We
is.
welcome
Because
all. John Dillon is welcome to come on anytime, and all I will do is make fun of how full of himself he is. But yes,
and so there was probably some additional steps where maybe Desert Book is learning from this. Some additional steps they could have taken to make sure that who they're inviting onto that stage is someone that they can trust and know that that'll play ball. So
I do think what's interesting though is they specifically invited him because of what he's done, and he made it. As he says, he's negotiated. He's like, I'm only going to do this if you let me do it my way. And by this I don't mean what he says about Elder Holland, but produce this module the way he does it in his tone, not get washed out by fitting into like the Deseret News, whatever he sees the sanitized Deseret News version of things. And they were like, that's totally cool. So good on Deseret News for being comfy with that. I do have to wonder if Deseret News could have just ignored this, right? Like this happened all the way back in August. He has a following. Sure, he does. But I also wonder, the whole point of this was to get voices that others might not always hear to them. And if we silence those voices, even if they do say things that in a way perhaps that they shouldn't, which is kind of church 101. You find a lot of people have gotten in hot water with the church. It's not about the message, it's about the deliverance of the message, right? That's very much what's happened a lot in recent years. But it's a shame because now people aren't going to receive that content. And we need that content. We need people who have lived these experiences to be the ones to tell us about it. We do not need it to continually come from the same voices in the same tone. Like we need that as church members. We absolutely do. And it's a shame that this won't come through now because of this. And sure, there might have been a minority that might have said like, well, this guy really challenged my views. I should look him up. And then you go, wait a second. He said some mean things about Elder Holland. I can't take anything I just learned seriously. Like, I don't know if that would happen either, but you understand it too, like you said.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, sure, there's always some people that won't hear his message perspective, but this is why. I mean, myself, who runs a third party organization, focus on a specific topic. I completely understand why the church doesn't do what I do with Leading Saints. It's for many reasons, but because a third party has put this information out there, it's still getting to the audience that I hope it gets to. in a way that doesn't involve Deseret Book or the church or Deseret News or anything like that. And so I think there's
And
ways
Kurt,
around it, but
7 million downloads, buddy. It is getting
that's
to
right.
people.
We just passed 7 million. So I think it is possible, but to me, I just don't. I'm not surprised that Deseret Book took this, Deseret Book took this step, and I don't. I think he was probably a bit naive, thinking that they're going to let him do it his way. Like, no, if you want to do it your way, go do it your way, and don't connect to the Deseret Book, and that's fine. And a lot of people do that, right? So I don't know. It's messy, and I don't think there's necessarily a villain in any of this, even though he's sort of, I don't know. There's
Kurt, there is a villain, and her name is Sherry Dew, as you know.
no, of course not.
Sherry, don't. Anyway, yeah, interesting story though. We'll link to his
Yep.
main piece on Medium, but he links to his Facebook post. He links to all of his original emails. Worth a read. I think, like a lot of things, it's good food for thought for all of us to just read through his thoughts and his
Yeah.
experience and see what we can learn from it.
I guess my overall thought here is that I don't his reaction to this and putting it online, like, I don't think it's helping in general. It's just firing up the wrong side of the disunity of this particular topic, right? Like, it gives more target to the church and whatnot, where he could have just said, "Hey, I get it. Bygones be bygones. We'll see you later, and I'll go do this on." Can I have the footage? How can I get the footage? Or what? Or maybe I'll go record this on my own. But it's not helping to be like, look at what the church has done to me. I don't know. It's just
Yeah, no,
silly.
I'm mostly with you there. Just to play devil's advocate though,
Let's hear it.
if people don't do that, how do we ever affect change? If people don't go out of their way to highlight these things, then doesn't everything just get swept under the rug into perpetuity?
I think, generally speaking, this form of protest, you could say, or pushback, is effective in some contexts, like politics and government. But in the context of a private religious organization that believes in prophets, seers, and revelators, I don't think it's helping.
Well, okay, so I listened to one of your recent podcasts though. This is you talked about how like we might this is more at the ward level, but like we need to work through conflict.
Yes.
You seem to actually support that notion.
Yes.
This is a little bit different from that, but how do you think this is different? This is this is more like public mudslinging, I guess, than
Right.
like sitting down and working through it. But speak to that for a second, Kirk. I thought that was a really interesting segment where you're like, 'cause your podcast was essentially about how to work through conflict within a ward. That was the basic idea that you guys were talking about. And because some might say, no, I don't want to touch this. I don't want to touch this. I want to keep the peace, more or less. But you were arguing like, no, you have to get into it. You don't want to get into it just for the sake of being like, haha, it's time to get real,
Right.
but just, I thought that
Yeah.
it was an interesting area. Why don't you talk about that
Yeah.
first?
Yeah. So as far as this type of conflict, like, I think there's two different levels that you're trying to get this settled on. The level of, like, the church in general as this multi-organization, and they're talking about the for-profit part of the church, the Deseret Book and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's some conflict there, but not in the necessarily the public square where that needs to get figured out. As far as, like, him going to his bishop saying, "I'm really struggling with this," then the bishop would say, "Let's talk about it. Like, what are you feeling? What's going on, and how do you, let's point out the hurt there." But, like, going to social media to do, like, anytime you involve social media, it would be just as effective as a ward having conflict. And so 5 people go to social media hoping that that'll fix the conflict. The social media, the public nature of it, is not going to fix the conflict. It's got to
And the
be
hardest thing with the social media is you're not having a good back and forth that way.
exactly.
You're having one person posting something and then mudslinging in the
It
comments.
was never designed for
You don't get
conflict
there.
resolution.
It was actually designed for conflict creation, people, and
Bingo.
so you stay
Right.
there and
Right. And
stay
so,
there. Yeah.
and he's only feeding that monster by going to social media platforms like Medium or like Facebook or whatever, and trying to say, "Hey, look at this. This is a problem. I can't believe it." Well, it is a problem, sure, but it's not going to be resolved that way.
No, it won't. I'm like 98% with you. I would say there could be somebody who could read this though and say, "Wow, this is a problem. I wonder what can I do in my." Someone could be inspired at their local level to address that, and they otherwise would not be if they had not been made aware of it through
Yeah.
social media channels.
Yeah. The reality is to
Not
have
always, but
influence on an organization, you have to maintain access
yeah,
to that organization, and
that's
this
good
is
too.
not maintaining access for him or others. And
That's
so
a good
there
thought,
it
Kurt.
is.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, folks, I think we're going to wrap it up this week. I'm going to save Kurt not talking about the tweet that
Oh,
discusses
come
the.
on.
You don't want to get
Do,
into
do,
this. We're
do
doing
you want
fine.
my short perspective of this tweet?
Oh, you actually want to get it? So there's a tweet that talks about basically like, okay, let me. I was really going to skip this, Kurt. I was like, cool, good show, good show. This is a quote from Dan McClellan that says, sometimes in the Mountain West, the Latter-day Saints' social identity must compete for costly signaling directly with the right-wing authoritarian social identity. When it does, the latter wins out far more frequently than one might hope. And this is because he was retweeting a quote, a tweet that said, despite a government order and email from our stake president and urging from the first presidency, dozens of people showed up to church today without masks. I sometimes wonder what it will take for people to listen to leaders when the ask is difficult, unlike masks. Anyway,
So is there any huge ginormous assumption he's making in this that you can point out?
just a little bit, we're painting in some broad strokes here across the
Right.
board.
It's a great, I mean, this is again going back to social media and why it is so toxic to our culture. This is a great tweet and it's going to get a lot of people riled up, but he's making the huge assumption that the only reason why people wouldn't wear masks is because they have a belief in a right-wing authoritarian social identity.
Well, I don't know if it's not the only reason why, but I think I what I do worry about, and I think this goes across all identities, not just the one side. I worry that as Latter-day Saints, we have slowly sort of seeded our church identity and our Latter-day Saint identity and given way to tribalism. And I think that's for a number of reasons. Part of it is social media. Um, Part of it is cable news. Part of it, honestly, I truly think that since we've even eased up on like church in general, like now it's 2 hour church. Now you're not supposed to have what used to be called firesides, whatever, bishop's youth discussions. You're supposed to have them in the afternoon now because we don't want to take away from the family. But I think all these, we don't do road shows, right? Like all these things we used to do. I think we've kind of eroded like the culture we have as saints because of all these things. As we've said, we're quote unquote focusing on the family, but I think that's left a vacuum. And I think other things have filled in that vacuum. I don't know what the answer is. You don't tell Salt Lake, like, bring back all the programming and all the busyness and stuff, right?
Yep.
But I worry about that because I don't think we're replacing it with, we're always going to replace it with something. And we're replacing it with identity politics or identity issues, more or less. And so in that sense, I think it's true. So I think you see in many instances, like amongst Latter-day Saints, that what we've seen a lot of, and I guess you can use the mask or COVID stuff as an example, but many who are like, they don't care. And these are more traditional, like, I hate to say it this way, Kurt, but more traditional Orthodox like members, traditionally like, right? But then this thing comes out that they don't like. And all of a sudden, no, you're leaning on your other identity for that instead of the church. And I'm not trying to say that if we still had 3 hour church and all these obligations, that like the feelings wouldn't be there. And it's COVID is especially difficult because it's not like anti-vaxxing or anything like that. It just came out because of COVID. It's been around for a long time, but it kind of feasts on that. But I really worry a lot about sort of how identity politics have taken over. And I don't think we're doing enough to fill in the void, to fill in that vacuum anymore as Latter-day Saints. We're all doing everything in the name of just ease off. It is home focused, church supported, and we are less involved now. And okay, so now we're just spending more time on Twitter, which is not good.
Right.
I don't know.
Absolutely. And I would say it's not so much a right-wing authoritarian social identity as it is just a human issue, right? On both sides of the spectrum, this is happening before, after, during pandemics. And, but I think your point is much more valid that, like, yes, there's a huge vacuum here, and we have to be very conscious of this vacuum that's there and intentional as far as how we make sure that vacuum gets filled.
I will say the one caveat I'll make here, though, that does make it a little two, I hate to say sides, but some of the sides a little bit distinct. For more liberal Latter-day Saints, there's kind of always been a little bit of that friction. I see a lot of the side, and everyone picks and chooses stuff, right? Like we're all guilty of that.
Yep.
But I do think we're looking at this place where it's not necessarily majoritarian per se, but we've seen the more kind of like traditional subset within the church. And these are the ones now who are like reckoning with, will I listen to the first presidency or not?
Mm-hmm.
That's not entirely new, of course, in our history, but I think a lot of that is something new. And then magnified by the social media age.
Yes.
That makes it really hard to deal with in that sense, which might be why people pick on, the right-wing authoritarian social identity or something like that, because that's sort of the new flavor that's been manifesting during this process. Like we've expected what we've seen from more progressive members of the church. Their actions aren't particularly new. And of course you have progressive members of the church now who are like, I'm all in, man. President President Nelson's like masking up in vaccine. Yeah, man, obedience, right? And then it's like, good, 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 good. I'm fine, but yeah, it's tough stuff. And I know you did the whole podcast on kind of like some of these issues
Yeah,
with
that's at the
COVID.
root of this. Is that at the end of the day, we pick and choose what value we're bringing to the surface and holding as the priority. And
I do, and this is constructive criticism.
let's hear it.
I enjoyed that podcast. I think people should listen to it overall. Um, the one thing I didn't agree with though was the premise. I liked it as a podcast
Uh-huh.
about how to navigate conflict as a ward, broadly speaking. I think
Uh-huh.
if that's what it's framed as, beautiful nuggets of information, a lot of worthwhile stuff to think about. But the one thing is, I worry about us even accepting the premises many of us have by default that disagreements about public health issues are inherently political. I think
Mhm.
they've been made political by different parties, and we've accepted that. And so when we lead into discussions, assuming it is political and accepting that premise, I worry about that. And I think any of us would do that. But like, I wish we could all
Yeah, that
back
makes
up and
sense.
say like, a public health crisis is a different thing. It's because a lot of parties have decided it's about politics and identity politics, but no, it's a public health issue. That's all it needs to be. And it's just it pains me because yeah, we're in all this case now where it's become political. It's become science and pseudoscience and all this stuff.
Yeah,
We could talk about it ad
no, that's fair.
nauseum, right?
I appreciate that criticism, Jeff. I hadn't
Right
thought
here
about it
on the
that
air.
way. And you
I think that
see,
was yeah. So that's the main thing. Just that part of the premise. But
yeah,
overall, remove that from it. I mean, it's a good episode. I think people should check it out. I know it's kind of a new feature you're toying with, right?
yeah, we're playing around with it. See how it goes. So
Yeah. So, anyways, Kurt, I don't want you to feel shut down. I thought it was good.
that was great.
I'm being clear. Folks, download that episode. Good food for thought about how we navigate difficult issues and how we like get a rise above. Anyway, I didn't want to talk about this tweet, but you insisted on it.
And I think it was a good discussion.
You wanted it so badly. You needed it in your life. So with that, everyone, we hope you have a great new year. Please go to thisweekinmormons.com. Also go to LDS Living, where you can see 18 photos of Elder Gong that'll make you love him even more, which is the greatest series they've ever thought of. Photos of so-and-so that'll make you love them even more. Just love whoever came up with that. Go to thisweekinmormons.com. Follow us on social media, where we try not to get too mean and too radical, right? We try to be okay on there. Kurt's on there too. You can follow him on various social media platforms. And go to leadingsaints.org to get everything you need to know about LDS leadership in one place, in a place that is not church approved. He wants to be clear about that, or part of the church
Right.
apparatus.
And I wouldn't claim it's the place to get all things about church leadership, but we have discussions, just like you don't give all news here, Jeff. We don't give all
No,
leadership.
it was good times.
So.
Okay, Kurt, anything else you want to plug before we go, buddy?
No, man, just I always enjoy coming on here and acting like I have a strong perspective on things, and keep up the good work, Jeff. We'll see you in 2022.
No, you keep up the good work,
Oh,
Kurt.
go on.
You do more than I do. All right, folks. Thanks for listening to Twim. We'll talk to you next week. Until then, take care. Be safe out there over the new year. And don't get Omicron or whatever. That's my hope for all of us. For Kurt, I'm Jeff. Bye-bye.